Hello everyone, I am skipping way ahead in this repair. This is a Stargate board set. I have already spared you the boredom of, I've replaced all of these sockets and I've replaced the power input and the cap. So that's all done, nice and clean. And on the main board, I have done the same. I have replaced all of these sockets, replaced these 3 sockets and this one, and replaced the power input. So that work has all been done. Nice and clean as usual. And then I moved on to checking software. And we have some software issues. We had 3 bad ROMs, and both of these decoders are no good. This is decoder 4. And I've got that in there right now. And I have D4 loaded. And if I verify it, it is no good. Whereas I think I have a set of these decoders up here in my custom chip thing. I was in here the other day and I think I saw some decoders. Yeah, right here. See that? Right here's a set of decoders. Well, let's run these over here and see what we get with these decoders. We'll take and pop decoder 4 from this in here. And do a verify on it. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's what it's supposed to do. That's the good decoder 4. And decoder 4 that was in this board set it's in the right way. No good. And so let's try decoder 6. And this is decoder 6 that was with this Stargate set. No good. Let's try the other one. The one that I have here. Stargate Williams decoder number 6. And try it again. This one's good. See, we have a good set of decoders here, and the decoders that were in this thing are no good. So I got 3 ROMs. I'm going to try to just erase these and then reprogram these EPROMs, but these are no good and need to be replaced. So I'll just pop these ones, and they look exactly the same. They got the same sticker on them and everything, which is cool. So these are just 2 I had here for some reason, and we'll put those in the board. Obviously, I'll have to charge for these because these things are not cheap. So, excellent. Let me fix these EPROMs and I'll be back. Alright, and after further review, the files on my little drive right there were bad. So 1, 2, and 3 are actually good Stargate ROMs. So we do have a good set of ROMs. And here's a nice cleaned up new socketed board. Looking great. So I've got that board done. I'll put all of my programming stuff away. All the software has been verified. I got the 2 good decoders now in the board. I have to put a 367 right there and then fill it with RAM. This is getting 4164 RAMs, which I actually had to order. So I am going to get this going with the 4116s, and then I'll convert to the 4164s when I get those. So I've replaced these two caps and replaced the header. So I'll go ahead and put in 367 RAMs, and we should be ready to fire this up. Okay, and I'll show you what this thing is doing. I've got it all put together, and I already did check the voltages, and the voltages are perfect. I have matching 4116 RAMs on this, and it's very important to get the timing right on these boards. You want to use a matching set if you can. You definitely have to have the timing matched. These are all 250. They are 200 nanosecond. So you want all the same speed. So we'll go ahead and fire this thing up, and you see what it's doing. It does the rug pattern, and then it is resetting. So I really think that is a ROM board problem. It's either going to be this PIA, and it's got a red dot on it. I wonder if this was tested bad. Well, it's soldered into the board, so I don't know. I do have the Inquisitor where I can test PIA chips. I think what I'll do is I'll probe around on this board, and I will look at the simple logic first, and then we'll move. See, you can see it boots to 0, so it passes. It's passing and then resetting. So that's why it tells me that it's this board. I hear my cat outside. She wants on. I hear her meowing. Come on. What are you doing? Boo-boo. All right. Yeah, it's just in a reset mode, so that is something on this board. Like I said, we'll go through. All of the ROMs are verified good, and I did double check all the legs. The legs are all in. The ROMs are in the right spot. They are all facing the right way. They're all good. So I'm just going to probe around, and I hope this guy's not bad. These generally don't fail. So it's either going to be the PIA or a simple logic chip. So I'm just going to probe around, and I'll show you what I find. Okay, and I probed around and looked around on this board, and I didn't see anything obvious with these logic chips. I didn't look at this one really, but anyway, I'm suspecting this guy. So I am preparing to remove that chip with my desoldering gun. So we'll remove that, and then we'll test this in the Inquisitor and see what it tells us. Well, I pulled and tested the PIA, and it tested absolutely fine. So I just kind of went with most likely suspect, 139. Instead of getting the analyzer out, I just grabbed a 139 and jumped over it. And you'll see now it's doing better. See, it's getting to that now. And then resetting. I think it's the 139. Yeah, I mean, that's my guess. So, all right. Well, I guess in order to check that for sure, let's go ahead and analyze the 139. Okay, I think I have figured out the problem. I think it's this cable. Just reset it. And there it goes, doing its resetting. And over and over and over. So I'm going to replace this cable. Yes, I couldn't find anything logically wrong with it. It wasn't the 139. I actually analyzed the 139 and it was fine. So I just started tinkering around with the cable, and by pressing on the cable you can get it to boot. But then it'll stay running. It will stay running once you know. See, it's running. Let's see if it goes into any if it's attract stuff, or if it's just kind of froze on this. I don't know. It should be going into gameplay. This thing may not be advancing. I don't know. There, well, it's just going right back to this. It should be going into Stargate gameplay. Well, we'll hold on for a second and see what is going on. I think it's just caught in a loop on this screen, actually. Give it one more time. You'll see it kind of try to do something different. And it'll come right back to this. Well, that's good news, though. It means our main board is doing just fine. And yeah, see, this is just stuck on this. If I hit reset, which I'll do right now, it'll be caught back in its reset loop. Yep. So I'll go ahead, shut down, and I'll replace this cable. I have a good used cable that's not this white, it's the black, I think. So, some of these off-colored ones are cheap. If you get a board like this with the black connectors, they're usually really solid. But you get blue ones and you get white ones like this, they just, for some reason, they're just cheap. So, alright. And this is the one we're going to put on here. This is one that I replaced a while ago, and it was not the problem. So these black ones like this are normally really good. It's these different color ones you got to watch out for. But these ones, I've never really had too much of a problem with the black ones. So I know this one's good, so we're going to put that right on here. Okay, after replacing this, I was kind of getting the same, I was getting the same issue. So I started looking at this end of the board, and this thing has some not the greatest connections. So I'm going to replace this with a new one, and hopefully I'll get a better solder connection into here. Okay, I've been searching all over for a hardware problem on here, and on a hunch, well, because I couldn't find any hardware issues, I figured maybe this thing was flaky, so I lifted this chip and put a new one in there, same issue. So I was like, well, the only really thing else is to check the ROM. So I actually burnt a complete set of Stargate ROMs and put in the board. Remember, my the set that was in here tested good. They all tested good. The 1, 2, and 3, they tested bad, but my ROM file was bad actually. So the ROMs were actually good. They all tested good, but I replaced all of the EEPROMs and it's working. So my tested good ROMs were not good. So I guess I'll just go one at a time, and I'll put one of them back in at a time until I find the one that's not. I mean, it dumps good, but there's something internally not right with that ROM to where when it's selected, it's just not working right. One of them, at least one of them. So that's pretty tricky because it'll dump fine and the reader will read it fine, but actually in the system, it won't work. So I went and I replaced the cable when I didn't need to replace the cable. I know these cables are probably good, so I got two more cables now that I'll keep. I'm keeping both of these. But I'm not removing this, so I'll send a new cable along. But I'll use these two down the line. Contrary to popular belief, these cables are not the biggest problems on these sets. There's so much. It's the sockets are number one. People mismatching RAMs is a big problem. Speeds and manufacturers. And it's so easy to do, right? Because there's so many on here. But that's critical. You notice this thing boots to 0 every time. It doesn't give no nonsensy errors at all. It's because they're all in sync. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna have to go one at a time and find out which one of these ROMs just doesn't play well. Well, that's it. And I found an error on the ROM board. I found a schematic error. It's not a schematic error. It's a production error on the Stargate soundboard, which in theory could cause flakiness. So if you have a Stargate, I would suggest doing this. Let me turn this off. Let me take this apart and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is the Stargate Rom Pcb Schematic, and as I was poking around looking at hardware, I came across this. Where are you at? Right there. 7420 at 2B. You can see all 4 inputs are tied together, pins 1, 2, 4, and 5 out to pin 6, right? And that comes off of this 139. One input inputs all of these. So basically this is just inverting the signal. You have a signal in and an inverted signal out. Is basically all that's doing, is inverting the signal. Now check out this board. 2B is right here. It's this 7420 right here. Pins 1, 2, 4, and 5 are tied together, right? Here is pin 1. You can see it marked right there. This had 1, 2, 3, and 4 tied together. And then pin 5 was floating. Pin 5 was not connected to this stuff. This trace from the 139 comes over, and it comes over to pin 4, so it's pin 4, 3, 2, 1. It's supposed to be 1, 2, 4, and 5. I blobbed the solder over on this to make that connection because pin 5 is floating. This only connects 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it should connect 1, 2, 4, and 5 with the output on 6. So, yeah, pin 5 is floating. That could if I mean, it's possible that that could come down and be read as a low. And if it's read as a low, that's going to change the whole operation of what this is trying to do. You know, if you've got 3 1s and a 0 on here on a NAND, then you're going to have a 1. And it's supposed to be a 0 out here. So I would suggest if you have a Stargate, look at that chip. This guy right here, 2B. And jump pin 5 over to 4, because that's supposed to be held high. So yeah, that is a production error. But they got away with it because pin 5 is floating, and normally a floating signal will always be looked at digitally as a high. But it's just unstable. It's unknown. It's right. It's just in that unknown region. It could go low. It could go high. So it's best to tie that high because it's supposed to be high. So there's a little tip for you. But yeah, I'm going to have to go through one at a time on these ROMs and figure out what's going on. Which one is not working well. All right, I got all the way to number 8, and we have found our flaky reset. So let's turn it off. Let's remove flaky 8. Flaky 8 out of there. And let's put in this number 8. And turn it on. We're back on. And there you go. Boot. So number 8 is bad. I'm going to go ahead and try the last two, number 7 and 11. So number 7 and 11, and hopefully it's just the one bad chip. We'll see. Okay, I put number 7 and number 11 back in. And it is resetting. It's almost working. And then it resets. So we're going to try, first we'll try number 7 by itself. And then 11, as there's at least one more bad ROM on here. Okay, well, after doing some testing around, I have found that there are three bad. Those chips are no good, and we're running. We're up and running and solid. Yep, I replaced number 7 and it was still bad. So I put 7 back in, and I took 11 out, and I put 11 in, or however I did it. You know, I tested both of these with the old chips, and they were both bad. Turns out all 3 of these chips are no good, even though they read good in a reader, which means internally they're just no good. These are just no good right here. So there is no point in saving these at all. You know, I wish that I could get that sticker off, would be nice, but I can't do that. You ruin it getting it off. So I'm just going to put my white stickers over here, and I'll put 7, 8, and 11 on them. And that's it. This thing's working good. It's pretty late tonight, so I'll do the burn-in test tomorrow. I imagine it'll be fine. I do still have to wait for the RAMs to come in. But yeah, so far what we got going on is we've replaced all of the sockets. There were only, I think there was like 10 bad RAM in this board when I got it. So the RAM were junk, and they were mismatched and just no good. Both of the decoders were bad. I've replaced these sockets, socket. I replaced the power input. I paid all of these sockets and the RAM for now. I resocketed this board, new power header, new cap. I've socketed a couple chips here and 3 new ROMs to get this thing going. That's all it took, guys, to get this thing going. And I replaced this header. I replaced the header and I replaced this cable. And I kept this header and the cable because there was nothing wrong with the header or the cable. So if I come across a Williams board that has an ugly header on it with just the pins sticking up like this, I'll put a shrouded header on it that I took off of this board. I'll put that on it. It's a lot better. So there was nothing wrong with it. I was just kind of pulling my hair out. And it took a while to come back to the fact that maybe the ROMs were bad, even though they tested good. Normally, if they test good, I move on from that. But I kept finding nothing wrong with that board. So that led me to that. Yeah, so that's good. Done. Now I just have to hook up the sound to do a burn-in test, make sure the sounds are all good and all that stuff. So come back to show you the sound working tomorrow and all that good stuff. And then we'll call this one good. Alright, I got back out to the Stargate board set and started messing around with the controls and the sound. I have 0 controls and 0 sounds. So this thing I was kind of tracing around the player 1 start. I have the luxury of having a good one. This one works. So I had the luxury of taking that and just kind of probing around. It looks like this PIA is no good because it's not putting any signals to these muxes. I got signals going into these PIAs and nothing coming out. So I believe this guy is toast. So I'm going to remove this PIA and test it. And then once we get the controls working, then I'll move on to sounds. Okay, the problem wasn't actually the PIA or anything. It was the connection in the cable to the board. But it's not necessarily a bad cable. It's more so a bad header. But the header's not really bad. It's just a combination of both. But what I can do to make this better and make it to where it won't fail is put a better header in here. So I'm going to put taller headers in. And that'll fix that problem. These ones are twice as tall, almost. You can see how much taller they are. Maybe. They're way taller. So they'll contact way better. So I'm just going to remove those and put this in. And that should fix the control issue. And then we're down to just sound. Okay, now we have 2 new connectors. We have a new one here and a new one here. Here's the old. And you can see it's much shorter and a little more oxidized. Yeah. So that will greatly improve connectivity. Yeah. Nice and clean. Alright, so go ahead and put it back together, and controls should work flawlessly now. And we'll just move on to sound. Okay, so we are hooked back up. And we got Stargate running. So let's go ahead and I got a little bit of I got the pin out right there. So I can do this. Let's coin this thing up. We are coined up, and this is start. Hey, we're started. Fire, fire, thrust, thrust. Down, up, down. Reverse is right here. Yeah. There's down, Inviso, thrust fire smart bomb right there. Hyperspace there. Okay, yeah, working good. Our controls work. Now we just do sound and this thing will be good to go. And RAM conversion. So, alright. And I can erase my ROMs that I burnt. Remember I burnt a set of ROMs for these guys? I'm going to go ahead and erase those. I don't need those anymore. So, cool. Be right back. Okay, I have pulled the PIA and the RAM out of the soundboard to test. And the PIA is bad. PIA. All the legs are nice. No bent legs or nothing like that. Put that baby in there. Ugh. Okay. Test. It's just got a couple bad ports. Right here and right here. So the PIA is no good. Now I'm going to test the RAM. I noticed when I was probing on the RAM chip, the sounds would come in and out. So I knew it was something to do in this area. You know, it was introducing some capacitance on one of the data bits on the RAM would trigger sounds. So I knew that something was funky in this area. So the PIA is bad. I'm now going to check the RAM. The RAM is probably okay. Okay, so I removed and replaced the DAC and I replaced the amp because there was some static crackly coming through the speaker. And I replaced the amp and that eliminated that little crackly speaker popping. I found out that this socket is no good. Is after replacing the amp and the DAC. And this is the PIA that was in that board. I just swapped them. I started messing around with this and sounds would come and go. So I know the socket's no good. So I'm replacing the socket. We got a new amp to quiet the pop down. And I replaced the DAC just because all of the sounds go through this DAC. They're all digital that are turned into analog sounds. So I wanted to go ahead and just, while I had my desoldering gun out, I pulled it and replaced it. I've got a ton of these DACs. So freshened up, we got a new DAC in it, new amp. This socket will be new and this board will be fixed. Okay, we are all put back together. So we have carbon zinc batteries in. Those are not alkaline. They will not leak and destroy the board. So we have temporary 4116s. This is getting 4164s, and that is just elementary. That's just replacing them and then doing a little bit of modification on the back of this. So we got that. All of the sockets. These two sockets have been replaced. These two decoders have been replaced. We have a new socket under here, and I replaced the socket and chip right here. I replaced this 40-pin header. I replaced the header under this. I replaced this cable. On this little guy, we just socketed. We pulled up and socketed this. So there's a socket under there. All of the ROM sockets have been replaced, and I had to replace 3 EEPROMs. I socketed these two chips, replaced the power header, and I just shorted this thing out, apparently. Yeah, graphite is probably, yeah, I just reset graphite. Probably not a good idea. So anyway, yeah, okay. This board, a lot of work done on the soundboard. had replaced the header and the cap here. This board had a lot of work done. We replaced the amp, replaced the PIA was bad. I had to socket this guy. I replaced and socketed the DAC. I socketed this RAM. And I guess that's it. I reflowed all of the headers. Every header on this set has been reflowed. Except for this. I haven't reflowed that. Yeah. And the CMOS does work because this thing will boot right up now. You don't have to reset it. So you can demonstrate that. I'll turn it off. It is now off, and now we'll turn it on. It'll boot right to the game. And that just means that the CMOS memory is working. There you go. And you can see, I believe it's got a bunch of credits. Yeah, it's holding the credits too where I was doing testing. So you can actually, we'll go into a one-player game. Maybe. Okay, now what? All right, something to look into. I replaced this PIA, and all of a sudden it's not working. Let me look into that. Okay, I just replaced the PIA. So we will see what's up. I'm going to start a game. Yeah. It looks like this PIA quit. Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds clean. No staticky pop nonsense with this new amp. This thing must have just let go. I don't know. It's working now. That's too bad too, because it's got the number on it. I'll send this back just like this, and if he wants to try to maybe heat it off and see if that can be removed to put on here. I don't know. Death. Alright. But it's working. It's working good. Controls are working good. So I think this PIA must have just took a crap. I don't know. So it looks like it's two PIAs that were placed. So. Alright. Well, I'm going to let this one sit here and run for the typical 3 to 4 hours, playing it now and again. And we'll call it good. A lot of work on this one with the sound and stuff. And nice and solid. Alright guys, we'll see you next episode. Bye for now.